Hello, I'm, as it says, Janet Sillett. I'm chairing this evening. Thank you all for coming. I don't recognize all of you, which is good to have some new people. Um, we'll be recording this, so if you don't want to be seen, just turn your camera off. We finish at 9. Sometimes we say that people should only have like 3 minutes to contribute. There are quite a lot of you, but I think after Nick's spoken, we'll be a bit more flexible. But if we start having lots of people wanting to come in and we don't have time, I might get a bit harsher about time. We're going to start with an introduction from Nick, Wrack, 15 minutes, 20 at the most, about the theme tonight. And then really it's open to your comments, questions, contributions, whatever. As you have seen, we're going to be talking about after the by-election, after the CEC elections, we're going to be talking about the future, the possible future of your party, and really the future for socialists in your party. And I guess just to say that I was saying to Nick just before you all came in that it feels a little bit surreal to be talking about this tonight, given what the horrendous events of the last few days. But we really felt this is what we advertise, and we're going to talk about this. But no doubt in the next few weeks, we'll come back to what is happening in Iran and elsewhere, looking at issues around colonialism, imperialism, and so on. So we're going to talk about the CEC. I think that's what I want to say for now. So, Nick, do you want to start your introduction?
Thanks very much, Janet, and thanks everybody for coming. And as Janet's just said, we're discussing the question of your party and recent developments against the background of the US-Israeli attack on Iran, in which hundreds of people have already died, and no doubt many more hundreds will die. And I just want to start off by saying it's precisely these sorts of world events, these horrible, horrific world events that make this discussion relevant, necessary, and important. Because why are we as socialists involved in political activity? What is it we want to achieve, and what is it that motivates us? I'm sure that whatever degree or place in the list of things or the importance, then the question of inequality, the question of poverty, the question of the counter reforms that have been waged against the international working class over the last 30 or 40 years, the question of climate catastrophe, which looms large with every day, and the question of war must be at the top of the list of the things that get us angry, get us motivated, and make us commit our lives, our time, our effort, our money, and so on, to trying to fight for a different world, a better world in which these problems do not face us on a daily basis or at all. So in talking about socialism, those of you that have been to previous meetings will know that our starting point is that we want to see the creation of a mass democratic socialist party. And that means for us a socialist party that stands for the abolition of the present capitalist profit system. We stand for the abolition of capitalism entirely, and its replacement with a different society in which the resources of the world are owned democratically in common, that is, by all, and are planned, managed, run, controlled by all democratically in the interests of all, and to protect the natural world in which we live, on which we depend, and of which we are a part. And that democratic socialist society, where the means of production, the land, the water, the minerals, and so on, the factories, the transport, the computer technology, and so on, is owned collectively, that would mean the end of the exploitation that we see in the present world. It would mean that the working class has emancipated itself, and classes have been abolished. So we have been discussing over the last 3 or so years how we can build support for those ideas. And I've said this in the last meeting that we had about, I can't remember, 5 weeks ago, when we were looking at the portending then CEC elections in your party and the state of your party, that your party was never the sort of party that we were advocating, because we wanted a clear democratic party based on the working class, but committed itself to that idea of socialism. That I'm sure you'll all be aware there are many different versions of what socialism means. And that's our version, our collectively agreed, or, there may be nuances here and there, but our general idea, that's what we mean by socialism. Some people use the term communism to describe that. I use the two terms interchangeably. For me, they mean the same thing. I think for Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, they also meant the same thing. But that's a different discussion. So we've just had the CEC, so the Central Executive Committee, I think it stands for, in your party, after months and months and months of dithering and delay, procrastination, wrangling, inter-party disputes, personal disputes, threats to take each other to court, and so on. And so we've arrived rather at a situation where in the elections, just over 24,000 people voted. I'm taking those figures from the Your Party website, and if I've got the figures correct, in the public holder position, so the elections that everybody could vote in, 24,115 people participated out of what it said on the website, or says on the website, 34,359 entitled full members who could vote. I've seen another figure that the returning officer gave, and has been quoted in The Guardian, of putting it at 40,985. So there's a difference there of 6,000. I don't know which membership figure to take as being the accurate one. But the main point about that is that you will all know that when your party was launched about 8-9 months ago, 800,000 people in the course of 5 or so months expressed an interest. 800,000. And because of the dither, the dallying and the procrastination, the bureaucratic inertia, and the obstruction really to the proto branches getting off the ground and developing into officially recognized branches that were capable and allowed to do things in the name of the party, almost all of that enthusiasm and excitement has dissipated. It's just like water into the sand in the desert. It's gone into the sand, it's dried up, and it's disappeared. And that's one reason why that's happened. It's precisely because of the political and organizational incompetency of those around, in my opinion, those around Jeremy Corbyn, who've been running the project from the beginning, in not allowing free rein to the members in the branches to get up and to get organized. And one consequence of that was that your party did not stand a candidate in the Gorton and Denton by-election in Manchester, which was just announced on on Thursday. Now, there may be some argument about whether your party was or wasn't in a position to announce a candidate. In my position, if we'd got things up and running quickly and captured the enthusiasm of those 800,000, we'd have had a membership of 500,000. We could have got a candidate. There would have been thousands and thousands of members in Manchester and from elsewhere who would have wanted to go to Gorton to campaign for that candidate, campaigning on a socialist programme. That was not to be, for the reasons I've outlined. And what has happened in the facing the possibility that reform would win, the only party that was both against Labour and reform was the Green Party, and the Green Party basically captured the ground. There's been a change in leadership. You'll know Zack Polanski, who's a very articulate and very able party leader for the Greens, not been in the job long, but you see him on social media and on the TV and so on. He does very well in articulating some radical positions. And so in Gorton and Denton, they stood. And I'll say this, in the context of Gorton, I don't like the Greens. I'm not a Green supporter. The Greens are not a socialist party, but I would have voted for the Greens. So I wouldn't have wanted to cast my vote for the Labour Party, and I would have wanted to defeat reform. So in the circumstances of Gorton, that's what I would have done. And it's clear that that's what most people who aren't Marxists, who probably aren't very committed socialists, that's what most working class people did in Gorton and Denton. And so we've got a combination of developments that have combined to completely undermine the Your Party project. And the question that we have to consider is it fatal? Is there any coming back? Can your party get out of this quagmire that it's found itself in? I would put a negative over that at this stage. I'm open to listening and I'm open to persuasion. But from my own personal experience in Withington, which is in Manchester, next door or near to Gorton and Denton rather, we've been trying to organise, and I've been helping in trying to organise the local branch. And of course, we haven't been allowed the data, the membership data. And there were up to almost 300 members in Withington. We could only identify 45. So we've not been able to initiate a qualifying branch with a 20% quorum. And when we were phoning round and contacting people who'd expressed an interest and got in touch, a general response was, well, I'm not too sure. You don't seem to be knowing what you're doing. There's all this infighting. I'm looking at the Greens. And I would hazard a guess that the Green Party has benefited from a large number of those 800,000 people that expressed an interest and were excited by the Your Party project. The Green Party under Zack Polanski has gone from about 50,000 members to now, just over the weekend, it's been announced, they've gone over 200,000 members. So the question is, well, what's the future hold for Your Party in those circumstances? Now, a lot of the people that have got involved and are active in Your Party are committed socialists, although there may be these differences over what we actually mean by the term. A lot of socialists had already joined the Green Party and are continuing to do so. And I think that trickle will turn into more than a trickle, and more people will follow suit. I think that those comrades are mistaken. I advise against it. But the question that they'll be asking is, well, what else is there to do? We can't build a branch. We've got no rights. Your party seems to be stuck in the mud. It's going nowhere. Things look much better over there in the Greens. It's exciting. We've just won a by-election, or they've just won a by-election, and so on. And you can see the attraction. From our point of view in talking about socialism, what we want to do is to discuss in meetings like this with people like you and others about how we can find allies, how we can work with people that we know, old rather, and new, about building the ideas for a real socialist alternative and working with others to construct that. And the question then arises, is that best done in your party or not? We were involved in discussions, last year with the Communist Party of Great Britain, which unfortunately didn't come to anything. But those sorts of discussions we're going to have to renew, because we need to get the Marxist left and those people that want that idea of a genuine, different type of society based on the democratic common ownership of the means of production, to work together, whatever the secondary differences might be, to construct that sort of party. Now, there was a coming together in your party for the elections. There was the grassroots left slate, and then the many was launched by the supporters of Jeremy Corbyn. And I'll be corrected if people have got different figures, but I've looked at those votes for the public policy holders, which I think gives I know that this voting system that was used, I'm not familiar with it. Other people might have a better idea. It's a sort of preference voting system, which isn't quite clear to me at the moment. I haven't studied it, but in that vote for the public policy holders, the first preference votes that went to Jeremy Corbyn were 14,784. So there were 9,000 people who didn't vote for Jeremy in their first preference. That's quite a considerable number. He may have got some second preferences, but they didn't need to be counted because he got through on the first. For Zara Sultana, her first preference votes were 4,341. And with the preference votes that when they were added up, she got elected with 8,212 votes. So not just over half of what Jeremy Corbyn got. That probably gives a roughish estimate of those that were committed to a more Marxist or socialist stroke communist point of view in terms of the programme and the direction of the party, compared with those who gathered around Jeremy Corbyn and endorsed everything pretty much that Jeremy Corbyn stood for. Again, those of you who've attended these meetings before will know that we categorize Corbynism or Jeremy Corbyn's programme as being a mild version of social democracy, a liberal programme, really. And this is where we get a sort of coming together of the policy and the programme and the approach to politics, where there will be a dovetailing with Corbyn or Corbynism in terms of your party under the leadership of the many, who won 14 out of the 24, 7 for the grassroots left, 3 independent. So a majority for the many. They will, the Corbyn slate or group will continue to mismanage your party. But the policies of Corbynism are very similar to the policies of the Greens. Neither poses the necessity of a fundamental break with capitalism, of the abolition of the capitalist system. So neither programme, either of the Greens or of Corbyn, understands and argues that if you want to see the end of wars, you have to end the system that produces them. That's capitalism. The same with inequality and the same with climate catastrophe. I'm going to end there because I think I've spoken for longer than I intended already. There are many, many other points that I hope will be raised in the course of the discussion. So thank you, Janet.
Right, thanks, Mick. Nick, sorry, I'm tired tonight. Yeah, I actually expected you to speak a little longer, so well done. I've got John ready to come in. So if you want to question Nick on some of the assumptions he's made, you agree with him, you don't agree with him, if there are other issues that he may have missed out and should have done, could you raise your electronic hand? John, I know you have to go, so anyway, you were first, so over to you.
Thanks very much, Janet. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, the point that I want to make really is this that significant political parties do change over the course of their histories. They develop just like individual people develop. And I always think it's premature to write off anybody or to delve into their past and say, oh, you said so and so 15 years ago when you were an entirely different person and it's not what you're saying now. Yada, da, 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 da. I mean, it's pathetic, to be honest, but the thing about parties, I think, is important because I don't think, Nick, that we were ever going to get a a mass socialist party out of the initiative that came forward. And yeah, within a few weeks, really, we knew that for certain because of the misbehaving started, as you correctly pointed out. But that kind of thing was always going to have to be fought for over time. What we were going to get was probably a left reformist party. And that's no bad thing, given what's happened to the Labour Party, which at times has been the suggestion of a left reformist party. But that also applies to the Greens. My main problem with the Greens, really, and this has been the result of copious articles by Alan Story in the Left Lane, is that they have a real problem or have had a real problem with internal democracy. They ban people from membership. They exclude people as readily, if not more so, than has been done in the early history of your party. That could change. Certainly, Zack Polanski's campaign within the Green Party has changed the Green Party. As I put in the chat, I think probably a lot of the 800,000 who expressed an initial interest in your party included a lot of socialists inside the Greens who've now decided to stay. And Polanski is, I think the main danger with Polanski is that we end up with a kind of Podemos or Syriza situation where the leader is just too slick and the gap between the leader and the led becomes, and in the absence of any real accountability and internal democracy in both of those parties, if that continues to be the case in the Greens, it could happen with that. So, I mean, I think that the future of the Greens depends on whether they deal with the issue of proper accountability of their leadership and proper accountability for those who do witch hunting inside the party. But your party can change. It can change. And the crucial thing to do as soon as the CEC meets is to win this battle to get the branches properly financed, properly supported in terms of membership data as soon as possible. There is talk from the many of assemblies deciding on the structure of the branches. That's kicking the thing down the road. And at the Stockport Your Party meeting yesterday afternoon, we decided that we were not going to do that, and we were going to press for it all to be done. But there's no need for assemblies. There's loads in what was passed at conference. The constitutional documents say lots about what the branches can be, should be, how they'll operate, blah, 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 blah. And there's enough there. That is a pathetic excuse, and it must be fought by independents and by grassroots left people inside. And we should be communicating with them. We should be talking to them. We should be pressing them as socialists, as communists, to actually push for the branches. And the other thing that we need is a very clear political statement, very clear political statements, because there's a vagueness, there's a vacuousness about what we've inherited from the exercise which happened before conference and which was largely endorsed by the conference. Thanks, Janet.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Lots of things there, I think, for other people to think about, slightly different perspective from Nick's. The other John now, Smithy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
I think now your party is a dead end. It's time to call it a day. Over the last I did join your party last year for about 5 minutes, and then I cancelled my direct debit. And then over the last 3 weeks, I've had 2 phone calls, 2 text messages, and a postcard from the national office trying to get me to vote for Jeremy Corbyn's The Many group. And it seems that it has worked. The voting has gone from 10,000 to 24,000 to 25,000. I've been thinking a lot over the last few days since the Gorton and Denton by-election result. And I think perhaps given the YP, your party debacle, Ted Grant was right to say in 1955 that outside the Labour Party there is nothing. Given that Labour will be wiped out in the May elections, there will be turmoil within Labour. This will include MPs and rank and file members. Perhaps it is time to make a turn to work within the Labour Party. Andy Burnham at the Britpop's fringe events at the weekend said that we must break the ceiling for working class bands. This is code for Labour needing to turn towards the working class. Starmer is likely to stagger on as a dead man walking, just as Theresa May staggered on as a dead woman walking until Boris Johnson became Tory party leader in 2019. Most soft left people will continue to join the Greens, not your party. Marxists, in my view, should rejoin the Labour in preparation for a swing leftwards. Starmer will stagger on because his protege West Street is tainted by his association with Mandelson. Angela Rayner will make a move once the HMRC wraps their knuckles. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, John. I imagine that's fairly controversial about your saying about rejoining the Labour Party. I noticed the Weekly Worker didn't say that, but what they did say in the last few days, in fact, the last week or so before Gorton, was that the right vote is for Labour, because Labour, although it's terrible, as we know, is a bourgeois party, whereas the Greens are petit bourgeois. And I don't agree with that in the slightest, although I wouldn't support the Greens either. So somebody might want to take you up on maybe your optimism, I think, about what you said about Labour. There isn't anyone else at the moment. Is there anyone else? There's a lot of people or a lot of chat. It's hard to read all of it. So is there anybody who's put something else in the chat who'd like to elaborate on that? If not, we'll go to Ed.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. I'm enjoying the discussion so far, comrades, and thanks to Nick for the introduction. I suppose it's sort of a paradox in a sense, isn't it? Because there is no way under present conditions that any trend or force on the left, besides Corbyn and to a lesser extent Sultana, could have sparked the interest that was sparked, which led to 800,000 people expressing an interest. Certainly, if the creation of a new Marxist organisation was announced or proposed, then it would clearly have better politics than what's resulted in your party, but it wouldn't have anything like that same level of interest. And so we need to sort of, I suppose, approach it in that way first of all, because even if all 800,000 of those people who expressed an interest could have been signed up as members, of course, what would have resulted from that would have still been extremely politically limited, in much the same way that the Green Party is extremely politically limited. It's common to hear people on the left claiming that the Greens are anti-capitalist, that in fact they're in practice a socialist party. If you go to their proposals on the economy, of course, that's not the case. They propose essentially wealth taxes on people who earn more, who have more than £10 million in assets. There are tens of thousands of those people in the UK who would probably rather quickly conclude that it's a better use of their money to funnel some of it into destabilizing a Green government than to sit back and allow a Green government to take it intact. And of course, that would happen pretty quickly. So it doesn't even come close to grasping the nettle of what to actually do about the capitalist class in society and the wealth and power that they hold. But in terms of what we have been left with now, well, as has been said, Corbyn, who never really wanted a party anyway, he wanted a federation of disparate local groups who'd rally round and get independent MPs like himself elected, and perhaps add a few more constituencies onto the current tally in Parliament, but not do much nationally apart from that. He's ended up, against his wishes, really, with a party, but one which offers very little different politically to the Green Party, aside from, to a certain extent, a distinguishable position on war and international issues, where Corbyn's sort of stop the war is bad, peace is better politics, may in time distinguish him somewhat from the Green Party, who now no longer oppose NATO, and who may well in the future go along the trajectory which has been taken by so many other European Green parties, firmly supporting NATO, firmly supporting Western wars of aggression and military intervention. But it really raises the question of what is this party for? How is it going to distinguish itself in practice, other than by relying on the sort of limited and diminishing, perhaps, attraction of its leading personalities and the name recognition that they may have? Certainly, the experience of Gorton and Denton, and I largely agree with Nick's analysis of that, with perhaps the same sort of pessimism in a sense. If the experience of Gorton and Denton for your party and the socialist left is anything to go by, it really calls into question the whole reason for existence of your party, doesn't it? Because if every time there's a threat by the right, by reform, we simply say, well, you know what, actually the Greens are a better place to deal with this than we are, then people are going to take us at our word, aren't they? And they're going to say, yeah, you know what, the Greens can do this better than you can. We're not going to vote for your party. We're not going to entertain the idea of a your party candidate coming along and splitting the vote. And if reform keep rising and rising, that's going to happen all over the country. Because all over the country there will be constituencies where reform are credible challengers, where they're in second place, a credible third place, and this question of who's best placed to defeat them, who should stand, who should not avoid, who should avoid splitting the vote, that's always going to present itself. And so either your party manages to distinguish itself politically, which seems unlikely at the moment with the leadership that it now has, with sort of left social democratic politics, which would not be at all out of place in the Green Party, or it really doesn't have any reason to exist. And so that may sound very pessimistic. I think it probably is, but I'm struggling to see any more reason for optimism than that at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. All right, Kate, and then Jeff, then Sarah. Kate, can you unmute?
I'm trying.
That's okay.
Have I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. I wanted to say that the first, is it John that spoke, who's got to leave early?
Yeah, John.
Was saying that parties can change, and that there shouldn't be so much pessimism. And well, that is my gut feeling, basically, because I don't feel I have anywhere else to go. I'm like appalled at the idea of rejoining Labour or supporting Labour, and that's actually coming from a Communist Party. I can't imagine it's even real. And when Nick kicked off, and he was saying, you know, about how it was so important because of what's happened with Iran, what came into my head was also today we had that news from Shabana Mahmood from the Home Office. You know, all these issues about earned settlement and taking away from people who've been successful with their asylum claim, and that's going to be reviewed, and they were going to be, she wants them to be sent back to those countries where we've had a part in war. And so those two things are linked for me. And I just think, God, you know, things have moved so far to the right. It feels like there's nowhere to breathe. I'm talking from a kind of emotional feeling, but it's like what's been going on has really shocked me. And I just feel like with the Labour Party, it's lost any validity. It's there are a few MPs in there that are good, but I don't know why they don't leave, actually. I don't know how they can stand being in that party. I mean, up to this point, I thought maybe they could make some kind of difference. But I think, you know, it's gone too far, because we're now supporting this bloodshed in Iran. It's so disgraceful. I just wanted to say something about Zack Polanski and Zara Sultana. I mean, okay, they might not be perfect, but what I feel is that we've actually had a voice for something else from those two people, and that was an unfettered voice in a way, because any voice in the Labour Party is silenced, and even those good MPs, they get the whip taken away. You know, they're punished and they're restricted, and I think Polanski has actually showed a lot of courage, and I've been so glad to hear that voice, which is supporting migrants. I wouldn't particularly want to join the Green Party, but I was very thankful for that, really. And Zara Sultana's role in standing up for those people on hunger strike and actually, sleeping outside of prison. I mean, I think she was a true revolutionary, and that actually really moved me, And I felt that the hunger strikers was so important as a challenge to what's going on. But I feel that Polanski is on his own. He doesn't seem to be like the rest of the Green Party. And I'm not quite sure where he's coming from. I mean, well, he is very good. He's very clever. And he seems like a good person. But I think he's going to burn out anyway. And just to finish, I know two people who are really capable socialists who've left your party. One of them has joined the Greens. And I'm really shocked. But I think it's actually to support an anti-Zionist motion on Palestine, which is going to go through their conference. And I think that's why he's done it, really. It's like a tactical thing. But, it's like nothing is as it was. Anyway, that's what I've got to say. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kate. Okay, I've got 3 more people with their hands up. Nick, do you want to come back initially now, or would you like to wait for the end? Or there's been quite a lot of a lot of points made that
Yeah, I can come back anytime you want.
I want you to decide.
Well, I'll come back in and then we can have another round.
Yeah, we've got 3 people anyway waiting, so
Yeah, sure.
we might want to pick up on what you say now. So if you can come back
Sure.
for a bit, not long. No, you've just muted yourself.
See, you want me to come back in now? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, unless you don't want to. I just
Right, if
think,
we've got other people that haven't spoken, bring them in.
okay, I just thought,
Yeah.
yes, I've got 3 people who haven't spoken. I just thought maybe you could take what's already been said and then get everybody else, in later and you can come back. But okay, we'll take Jeff first.
Right. I think the first point to make is just how rapidly the situation is changing. We tend to underestimate it. Between Reform and the Greens, they got 70% of the vote in that constituency. The 2 parties that are considered the parties of state came 1/3 and the other lost its deposit. That is a momentous change in the structure of British politics, and we're totally underestimating the nature of that change. It's been a long time coming. The British major parties had their bulk membership in the 1950s, and they've been declining for a very long time, but they've now reached a critical point. And I think we're underestimating that. I think that we need to also look at the world situation. Yeah, the war, immediacy of war is overwhelmingly important, and the monstrous nature of American imperialism is something else, and the fawning nature of Starmer is probably disgusting quite a lot of his own party. But the long-term situation for Britain is pretty bad. It's tied between 3 major blocs: the US, the EU, and China. And the old parties are totally ill-equipped to deal with this new crisis situation. They're stuck in the past. They're notorious for their corruption. I'm old enough to remember the Profumo crisis. Profumo, having been caught lying to Parliament, left Parliament and did good works, in inverted commas, in the East End of London and never returned to politics. The current crowd, like Angela Rayner, are just as corrupt. They sit on the backbenches for a little time and then they're back again. That level of corruption, the whole focus has been on the most disgusting corruption, but acceptable levels of corruption in the establishment have crept all the way through. There's a growing disgust. There's a growing disgust at the whole political structure. How do we relate to the Greens? Well, I think what's been said is right. The Greens are not a socialist party. The Labour Party is a million miles from it and is in a state, as I said, of advanced decay. Let's not kid ourselves. Our way forward, well, what we have gained out of this is a large body of social democrats have begun discussion with people like us in a wholly new way, not as rivals, probably selling some unreadable newspaper, but as members of a common cause. And what we have to do is work out how we develop that common cause to begin to reflect and understand socialism. And that means a powerful educational work. We are in a crisis. We can't delay that work, but we must actually do it. And this is the best medium in which to do it. It is not a revolutionary party. It ain't going to become one. And I think we have to recognize that. But it is a radical change in the situation which reflects that much bigger change of the decay of political structures. And you'll note that on the continent, much the same thing has happened. First in Greece, then a major crisis for social democracy in Spain, a collapse of social democracy in France, a near collapse of social democracy in Germany. We need to take these things into account. So it's a much bigger crisis, and we have a very tricky role, but we have to get on with some serious socialist discussion and education to take this forward at this stage. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Soraya.
Thanks. And I begin by saying thanks to Nick for the introduction. And I agree with what he said, and I agree with what Ed said. That's not to say I disagree with what everybody else has said, but the general tenet. My starting point is that we need a different type of society, and I would presume that everybody on this discussion has that same view. And so, how do we get to that different society? And we have to be able to act, no matter how few there are of us, or how disparate. Because I don't think that there are a few people who have the idea that we need to get rid of capitalism, but they are not coordinated. And that's why I think we need a mass, call it what you want, socialist communist party. To be able to act, we need to see where we are. And the emergence of your party was the potential. It's clear to me that there are a huge potential has been squandered. Nobody was saying, well, I wasn't under the impression that certainly nobody in these meetings has been saying that it was a socialist party that had been established. And personally, and I don't think, again, I can't speak for others, but I know those who organised talking about socialism didn't have illusions in Corbyn or Sultana or what they would achieve, but it was the massive interest which reflected what I think is far wider in here, a desire for something different to change the way the lives of working people, working class families, how they are lived, because capitalism doesn't do anything for us. So I think that's what it showed. And those hundreds of thousands who showed an interest in your party and other initiatives, and by that the risk of the reform, we've seen how reform has grown, they're looking for a place that provides an alternative to their lives. And they haven't, I'm afraid I have to disagree with John, not Tumman, but forgive me, the other one whose name I can't see. They haven't disappeared into the ether. It's a question of where will, Smithy, where will they go? And what will they be snapped up by far right ideas, by the ideas of reform, if there isn't a left alternative? If there isn't, and when I say left, I don't mean left, I mean a socialist, communist alternative. And yes, some have gone to the Greens, and I can see the Greens growing massively over the next period until people are hit in the face with the fact that the reality of their politics is not to change society, and when they've been in power, not even to reform it, but actually to carry out the same old cuts, accepting the logic of capitalism. So I don't think there was a suggestion, well, does this mean that socialist communists should go back to the Labour Party? I don't think there is. I don't think people are turning towards the Labour Party. They're leaving it. I don't think that it's the MPs who are the Labour MPs that are so-called on the left. That who are they? What are they doing? Because the problem is they have to be a member of Parliament. You have unless you take the principal position of only taking the wage of an average skilled worker, they are on a comfortable life. And so it's quite easy to be sort of mildly on, speak out about certain things, but they're not going to actually give up their comfortable life. Corbyn himself was pushed out because of, yes, principled positions, but he didn't want to set up your party. He was pushed from the sidelines to do something, but actually, I won't repeat what Nick and others have said about what's happened with the squandering of the potential with your party. Andy Burnham is setting himself up for a leadership competition. So of course he's making those comments. I mean, it doesn't mean I disagree with the fact that the Labour Party should be thinking of the working class. It's just what's the motivation behind him saying it? I mean, I'm saying this in a meeting of, I hope, like-minded people. So I'm not going to be saying, oh, we shouldn't be saying this. It's just, what do we see if somebody's making a proposal that, in fact, there is fertile ground for at this moment in the Labour Party? I don't see it. I don't think people will be swinging towards the Labour Party. I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Lindsay.
Hi, comrades. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. I just want to say I was pretty shocked with the other comrade suggesting that we should rejoin the Labour Party. I see that the Labour Party is imploding and people are rejecting it left, right and centre. And any of the major issues that we have been faced with, whether it's Starmer's U-turn now on involving himself or involving us in a war in the Middle East, or whether it's things like the winter fuel payments, all the stuff that we could remember over the last year. It's just no way. The party is reactionary, is sinking into a hideous quagmire. And I agree with Soraya's comments about the Labour MPs that haven't left, because, yeah, £90,000 a year is a very comfortable salary. And I think you forget, potentially you could forget where you come from if you're on that kind of money. It just lifts you out of all the stresses and strains that most of us face. And I really agreed with all the points that Kate made, and I can really empathise with her when she said, I think she mentioned that she felt quite emotional about stuff, and that's exactly how I feel. And I think from a personal point of view, I have kind of I've been all over the place. I mean, my history is I was formerly in militant, and then the Socialist Party, and then I joined the Labour Party. Was very active. Was a CLP secretary for a bit, and we all know how that imploded with the 2019 election and so on and so forth. And then I kind of just plodded around for the next 5 years or so. And then your party, I thought, this is it, joined. And then we've seen exactly what's happened. And then I kind of floundered again and thought, oh, okay, I'll join the Green Party, which I did locally. And they're really lovely people. And we had elections here, by-election and stuff like that, got involved. But you know, when you're sitting in a meeting and you're just thinking, what the hell am I doing? This is not, this is not really me, you know, like I'm just not being true to myself here. So I had a very embarrassing scenario where I had to write a little resignation letter after being elected onto a committee, and but I was honest. So I've kind of floundered, and I just feel like all over the place. So I've now rejoined your party. But as Ed said, you know, is there a relevance there? Because I thought, please God, oh, by the way, ex-Catholic, don't believe in God anymore, but still come out with the phrases. I just thought, you know, maybe the CEC elections, we will get the grassroots left slate through. But we are where we are. So, and I'm in an area of the country where Reform run the county council, the Tories half run the district. It's a very difficult area to be progressive in, but we do have comrades here. There is a group of us, but I just personally, I just don't know what the hell to do. So I'm very grateful to be involved in your discussions that kind of keep me level-headed. And I don't know what I'm saying, but thank you very much, comrades. I'll leave it there.
Lindsay, thanks a lot. I'm sure quite a few of us have similar, you know, responses to how we really feel or what we want to do, and emotional. And I don't think I've had your political background. I have to say, I have had Ted Grant sleeping on the floor of a bedsit, as my ex-husband was a militant full-timer, but that's my relationship to militants. So, and it was not great, I have to say. Right, we've got Will, and then we haven't got anyone else, but there may be somebody else. But if not, I might say something, but we'll go back to Nick. So, Will.
Yeah, I haven't got very much to say, so this will be brief. But a couple of things really, and actually what Lindsay said actually is added into this. I think a couple of things that people have said really struck me. Kate ended her contribution by saying, "Nothing is like as it was." Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting thing to say, because I think that's where we are. There's no doubt about that. And Jeff, I think, said it in a very different way. Actually, Jeff Barr was talking about, you know, if you look at from the level of the totality, what's happening to the British political system, it is really, really interesting, because, you know, the Denton, the results there had the Tories and the Liberal Democrats losing their deposits. And, you know, it's a snapshot. Okay, that's a snapshot, and that's true. But the direction of travel of the two main political parties that we've become used to for in the post-war period, let's put it like that, they were there before that, but the kind of post-war settlement, their vote share has been declining, apart from the Corbyn surge a little bit, and, you know, sometimes around Blair, for, you know, like decades now, absolute decades. And so we're kind of faced, I think, with a massively dynamic situation where we don't know what the outcome is going to be. I actually think, because of the surge of the Greens, that your party, ironically, your party as an electoral force is stuffed for the next 2 years. Totally stuffed, right? But the question is what does it do as an organisation? Because the electoralists are in a corner in your party, actually, in a way that the campaigners weren't. And actually, probably, you know, some of the electoralists were going, okay, let's just build a popular front against reform by getting people to back the Greens. But I think it's still a massively dynamic situation we're in. And I think the question, and Jeff, I hope I've not misunderstood you, but I really agreed with what you were saying about there is a conversation going on amongst people who call themselves socialists. And I think that's a really important conversation, right? Whether they call themselves socialists and they think of themselves, and we wouldn't think of them as socialists, or they're kind of a bit in the middle, or they're kind of communists who think of themselves as socialists, or socialists who say, don't use the word communist, but would agree with the kind of formulations that have been put forward into, a kind of a socialist democracy, I would call it, where the economy is under working class control. There's lots of different forms of socialism. And I think what I'm wondering, and I don't know, because I've been trying to think about this, but I don't know the answer. I don't have any answers for myself, never mind anybody else. What is there a rational kernel inside what's happened with your party? Now, we'd have all liked there to be a zero on the end of the numbers, right? So we'd rather be at 380,000 or 400,000. But is that a site of political battle over the future of socialism and its interpretation? And I'm kind of thinking at the moment that it might be. And that's where the most high-level political discussion can be had. And that maybe is the focus of socialist activity for the next couple of years. What actually comes out of, the CEC elections, what your party does, is actually the space about what should a socialist party. Corbyn uses the word socialism, yeah. Actually, he still, he calls himself a socialist. He does in writing. Now I've read it. And other people call themselves socialists who really disagree with Corbyn. But for me, for a long time, that's been the battleground. And I think it poses, the discussion is, do we think there is a rational kernel inside your party for that kind of discussion? At the moment, I think there might be.
Okay,
and I think maybe that's what we should be doing.
Have you finished? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
I think so.
Well, go on to Nick. I guess I didn't want to add that much really, just to say, I think following from Will and then say something to ask Nick exactly what. So I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. I mean, I don't know. I think at the last meeting I said if it looks like it's going to, be a Corbyn clique, I want to walk out. I probably won't. I don't know. We'll see. But that's possibly to do with me personally, my age or whatever. I think I've kind of changed that. But from what Will was saying, what Jeff was saying, what one or two other people were saying, I share really Nick, Soraya, Ed's pessimism, looking at what's happened from before actually the party was launched and until the culmination in the CEC elections. But there is actually still a large group of members who did not support Corbyn or the Corbyn clique. And the way the campaign was run, it was about supporting Corbyn or not supporting Corbyn. There was very little, apart from the democracy issues, there was very little. That's how they pushed it. And there were a lot of people who actually didn't do that. They were in a minority, a clear minority, but they're there. And, there are, and I think the people in that group would have had different reasons for supporting people from the grassroots left or supporting Sultana. But in that group, I imagine, and knowing some of them, that they are younger, they're more dynamic, they're the people who sustain the proto branches where they were. I mean, they weren't all over the country, they weren't all wonderful, but they're the people who have the energy to do that. So I guess what I'm saying, Nick, is there still not space for that political, as Will was saying, that political dialogue? I don't actually share Will's optimism about this is the place for where that debate and agenda will be, the focus of it will be your party. I don't actually see that. But there is a possibility, I guess, that even with those lower numbers, there is a chance that you can beat the bureaucracy, you can beat the CEC leadership, because actually they're pretty lousy, they're pretty poor, they're pretty weak. And I'm not that keen on the ones who got in from the grassroots slate either. I think they're nice people, but they're not actually the most dynamic of that slate. But there are ways politically through that, or we've had it, if we're going to be totally constrained by what is actually not a very strong position that they're in. So I think I'm asking you that. I don't know the answers to that. And obviously, none of us know what's going to happen. Events change things, circumstances change. So I don't see anyone else. Lindsay, is that an old hand, or did you want to come back? No. Okay. Nick, okay, you've got like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm glad that I didn't come back in the middle of the discussion, because I thought it was excellent. I thought it was really, really good. And there were some, questions that basically go to the heart of the question. And I thought Lindsay's contribution was really good, because I think that is probably the experience of many, many, many socialists, people who have a Marxist background, and we're trying to work out, and that's the purpose of these meetings, is to try to give a space to try to work out how we, as a small number of Marxists who want to see a fundamental change in the way society is organized, can actually confront the situation that we're confronted with. And I thought that Janet's question to me sums it up. Is there still not a space to have the debate and dialogue in your party? Well, that's really I'm going to sidestep it, because that's really what we're trying to discuss. And I don't know that we can come to a full and final conclusion on the basis of 1 or 2 or even 3 meetings and so on. We need a little bit of time, I think, for the CEC to get into place and to see how things emerge. I don't think we've seen the last of the drift towards the Green Party. From what I understand, disappointed candidates from the Green Party, the grassroots left, might be on that way themselves. I don't know. I think in the branches, it's very, very difficult. Will there be a distribution of the data? Will the branches be sanctioned? Will branches be able to do anything? I agree with, well, let me preface before I carry on. I spoke more briefly than I'm prone to do at the beginning, because I wanted the discussion to unfold. Lots of things that people have said were things that I had in my notes, and so I agree with a lot of what's been said. Electorally, so this is Will's point. Your party was envisaged by the Corbynite left, if not by the Marxist left. And I have my disagreements with those Marxists that I'm describing, and I'll come to that in a moment. But your party was seen as the necessary socialist, in Corbyn's terms, socialist alternative to the Labour Party and the way of defeating reform. And it had some mileage in that, but I'm afraid that the space has been taken over at the moment. It's been occupied by the Green Party. So the question that we've got to answer is, how much can an electoral alternative to the Labour Party and an attempt to win working class people away from reform succeed if it's not standing and winning in elections? I mean, in the May elections, I don't, we've been discussing this, and there might be a disagreement amongst us, but I don't see how there are going to be any your party candidates. There may be candidates who are your party members and who may get endorsement, but if there are no branches to elect councillor candidates, how do we have official councillor candidates. Even if there are, there will be very few. And where are they going to stand? And do you see the Green Party, or do we see the Green Party giving way? Corbyn almost seems to have recognised and acquiesced to this reality in the comments that he came out with just days after just after the Gorton and by-election, when he's now been sanctioned as he will be announced as the parliamentary leader, even though we have a collective leadership in your party. He is going to be deemed by the CEC, in which he has a majority, as being the leader. And he said, I've got the quote somewhere, I don't know if I can find it, but he's talked about basically a collaboration with the Greens. Well, on whose terms? I mean, the Greens stood against him. I think I'm not mistaken in saying the Greens stood against him in Islington.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Greens going? The Greens think they're on a roll, and they are. Are they going to give way for your party candidates, or are they going to want to count up every single vote across the country to show that they've overtaken, for example, the Liberal Democrats? So these are open questions. And can I just say, I don't think I have a pessimistic view. And I don't think that Ed or Soraya are expressing pessimism. I think it was the Dutch philosopher Spinoza who said, ours is not to laugh or cry, but to understand. So what we're trying to do really is to just analyze and assess the reality that confronts us. And then it gives us a better understanding with which to decide how to go forward. Because I mean, I've been a communist or a Marxist or a socialist, whatever you want to call me, since I read the Communist Manifesto as a 12 or 13-year-old. I'm not going to change my views, although my view of communism, Marxism, has developed. I share a bit of history with Lindsay, I think, because I used to be a full-timer for the Militant. I used to edit the paper. My views have developed since those days, but I still remain committed to a fundamental transformation of society. So that's what we're trying to do. And then once we can assess what's going on, and again, I don't think we're underestimating the processes that are taking place. It may be that we haven't had an opportunity to elaborate them all in detail. I do think that there is, on the left in Britain and the Marxist left inclusive in Britain, a certain sort of almost British exceptionalism that thinks that what we've seen on the European continent can't happen in Britain. That when we see the collapse of the 1.5 million Italian Communist Party, or the mass French Communist Party, and the replacement of those workers' organizations with working class people who vote for fascists in the form of Maloney and Le Pen, it tells you that something quite profound and dangerous is happening. And the challenge that we have is, how do we intervene, and on what program do we win working class people to the idea of something different? What is that difference? I think a lot of people who have become fed up, as Lindsay described it very well, fed up and walked away from the Labour Party, it's been going on for decades. The Labour Party itself has never been a socialist party. That's the first thing. It's, I think Janet mentioned the CPGB, the Weekly Worker. They characterize it, and I agree with this, they characterize it as not as a bourgeois party, but as a bourgeois workers' party, because it's got the affiliation of the trade unions. But the danger is that you sort of come down with these categories, and then you sort of have a scholastic reasoning. The Labour Party is still a capitalist workers' party, just about, but okay. And therefore, what? We have to call for a vote for it. I just don't see the logic in that. the Greens stood in Gorton and Denton on a more left-wing programme than the Labour Party. And the Labour Party is seen by a large number of working class people as being the party that has dumped on them from a great height for a long period of time. And even though there were solid Labour voters, they've said no, and they want to change. And in the crises that is facing society, you have sections of the ruling class that are toying with, well, not toying, they have adopted further and further right-wing policies and used particularly the scapegoating of migrants and minorities to divide the working class and to try to lead people by the nose towards far-right, xenophobic, anti-migration parties whose agenda hidden behind that is a far-right conservative program of deregulation, privatization, and the evaporation of every single reform that has been won by the working class over the last 100 years. And what you've got with reform, it's really turning into the right wing of the Tory party. So how do we appeal to them? To those workers? And that means we have to develop a program that raises all the social issues. It can't be a narrow program on the question of identity politics, or just on the question of, I don't want to be misconstrued when I say just, but on the question of Gaza. I mean, it obviously played a massive role in Gorton and Denton, and quite rightly, among a large Muslim electorate. But a working class communist party has to have policies and a program about how things will be run. How will people live? How will they afford to put food on the table? How will we have clean rivers, streams, seas, so that we don't have the situation that was fantastically portrayed in that series that's just been on TV, Dirty Business? I mean, to be honest, any significant socialist party could make a huge amount of capital out of taking up the question of water privatization and what's happening, with the illnesses and the deaths to people caused by the privatization of water, and put it into the context that is just the pinnacle of what is wrong with private enterprise of the capitalist system. It's not just a question of taking water back into the old Labour nationalisation, but of having democratic control over everything, not just water. What about the equipment that is used to build the piping? What about the materials that are used to make the piping? Why should they be in private hands? We need a fully integrated, planned, democratically, a society that looks after everybody, in which nobody is left behind. And I think a communist party, even a small one, that presented those ideas would gain attraction. So the question is, just going to take a step back. When your party was being considered and when it was launched, we took the view in talking about socialism, not that this was going to be turned into a revolutionary socialist party, a party that stands for the fundamental transformation of society. We didn't expect that at all. We had no illusions whatsoever. We knew that it was going to be a party committed to the Corbynite political project. That is, it was going to be a reformist, and not just a reformist socialist party, a mild reformist socialist party. And it doesn't actually matter what program has been adopted at the conference, although it's still very vague and contradictory, and it's still actually a social democratic program, because under the leadership of Corbyn and his acolytes and the people that he's surrounding himself with, there's no doubt about it, it's going to be a mild social democratic party. And I'm afraid that is not going to persuade a lot of people that that's the answer. And we we won't win some of the people that have gone to reform or have been seduced in that direction unless we've got something to say about the nature of the whole of society, about the corruption that's been mentioned in this discussion, about the rottenness that invades and infects every single aspect of society. Working class people are not stupid, and there'll be all sorts of reasons why they didn't want to vote Labour in the Gorton by-election. But into that, you have to throw the question not just of the war in Gaza, not supine Starmer as revealed now on the question of Iran, not the horrible echoing of reform and the racism and the xenophobia, but questions like Mandelson. Why was Mandelson appointed? They knew he'd been forced to resign from the cabinet twice in the past because of financial irregularities. So Labour is, we've got Rayner's irregularities, we've got Rachel Reeves' issues. A party that stood candidates committed to a worker's wage, that would begin to break the mould. Unfortunately, I don't think Zara Sultana has committed to that. Again, it shows a weakness in the programme that she's been putting forward, notwithstanding I might agree with some of the points that Kate mentioned. So we joined and advocated the joining of your party because we saw that between them, Corbyn particularly, and Sultana because of her youthful exuberance and energy, that they could attract a large number of people that Will has characterised as generally being interested in a form of socialism, and that debate being a place where we want to participate. Not a pedantic discussion about what do we mean by socialism, but trying to win people to the idea of a different form of society, a democratic form of society, one in which the resources and the wealth of the world are owned collectively for everybody. And, whatever word we use to describe that, it may be meaningless. It may be irrelevant. If we could come up with a different word, maybe we could, maybe we should. But what we have to point out is that the programme of Corbyn will not achieve it. It does not confront the class division in society fundamentally. It doesn't aim to get rid of capitalism. Corbyn may characterise or call himself in writing, and I don't doubt it, a socialist. But what does he mean by that? If the Greens were to say that we're socialists, what do they mean by that? What they mean by it is the socialism of reforms, the socialism which accepts the fundamental class-based nature of the division in society, with a tiny handful owning everything and the majority of people working to make them a profit. So if you go to the Green Party website, for example, you could be forgiven for thinking that you've gone to a website for Corbyn. On the Green Party website, there's the home page. It's got about 24 different tiles that you can click through. So, for example, on pay, working conditions, local government, etc. And probably on 20 out of 24, it says fairer. A fairer this, a fairer that, a fairer the other. Unless you get rid of capitalism, what is meant by fairer? At what level should we tax people when we allow people to become trillionaires?
Sorry, Nick, can you wind up?
Yeah. All right. So what's the answer? Well, at the moment, I think it's a bit of wait and see. We have to understand that our ideas are in a minority. And so we have to be patient, and we can't expect to achieve miracles. But if we are going to intervene in your party, we should do so clearly and boldly on the basis of the ideas of Marxism, of communism, of socialism, of trying to argue for a programme that confronts the system. Last point, just on the question of the Greens. The Greens, when they controlled Brighton, implemented cuts. In Bristol, they're implementing cuts. I've seen that they've voted for the Labour Party cuts in Leicester. And there's been a bit of a debate on the left about the importance of cuts. My position is this, that no working class socialist representative should be prepared and should not vote for any cuts. We should not take responsibility for managing capitalism at the expense of the working class. And that should be our basic principle. We're not going to give ground to the capitalists, and we won't implement their attacks on our class. And we want to fight for a society in which we don't have to wage that class war any longer, because we get rid of the capitalist class and we live collectively and collaboratively. Thank you. Thanks very much, Nick. I don't know if I said about pessimism. I think it was about pessimism about the role, the future role, importance, influence of your party. It wasn't about people being pessimistic about socialism or whatever. Right, well, we've got 2 minutes left. I'd just like to thank everybody who's come, and new people particularly. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and thanks particularly to everybody who contributed. It was a really, I think, thoughtful, interesting, actually quite lively discussion. A lot of views in the chat that we haven't been able to cover. As some of you know, we have a Facebook page. We've got the YouTube channel where these meetings are there, and we have a X account, which not many people see, so have a look at that if you can. And we always welcome contributions from people, articles, short articles, comments, or whatever. And clearly this is a conversation that isn't going to end anytime soon, so it'd be really good to get your contributions. Thank you, Nick. And I guess we'll be meeting we're meeting once a month at the moment, approximately, or once every 4 or 5 weeks. So we'll let you all know what the next few meetings we're going to talk about. But clearly, as somebody was saying, it's not just dynamic politics, it's changing seems to be every day. So we need to respect that, respond to that in some way. So thank you very much. We finished right on time. I hope you have a good evening for the rest of the evening. Thanks a lot.